Let me ask you something, and I want you to actually think about it for a second before moving on. When was the last time you felt genuinely deeply satisfied, not just entertained, not distracted, not full from eating something or tired from scrolling for 3 hours? I mean, that feeling where you look back at your day or your week and you think, yeah, that mattered. I did something real for a lot of people. That feeling is getting harder to find. And here's the strange part. It's not because life is getting harder. It's because in a lot of ways, life is getting easier. You don't have to wait for anything. You don't have to struggle for much. You don't have to be bored for even 60 seconds if you don't want to be. And somehow, that's a problem. Today, we're going to talk about something that nobody really warns you about. Something that happens slowly, quietly, in the background of a perfectly comfortable life. We're going to talk about why ease, real, total, frictionless ease, might be one of the most quietly destructive forces in modern life. Not because comfort is evil, but because your brain was never built for it. Think about what a normal Tuesday looks like in 2025. You wake up. Your phone has already filtered through 1,000 notifications and shown you the ones it thinks you care about. You order breakfast from an app. It arrives in 20 minutes. You start a show you discovered because an algorithm noticed you once watched something similar. If you need to know something, you don't look it up, you ask. If you need a product, you click. If you feel lonely, you open a social feed. If you're bored, there are literally millions of options within arm's reach. This would have sounded like science fiction to someone living even 50 years ago. Between 2010 and 2023, the on-demand economy grew by over 3,000%. We now spend more on subscriptions, streaming, and delivery than any previous generation. We have more entertainment, more convenience, more access, and by many measures, less fulfillment. A 2023 Gallup survey found that despite record access to material goods and digital services, young Americans reported some of the lowest scores on life satisfaction questions in decades. Anxiety and purposelessness were at near historic highs. How does that make sense? You'd think more comfort would mean more happiness. That's what we've always assumed. That's kind of the whole goal of civilization, right? Make life easier, reduce suffering, create abundance. And yet, there's a phrase that psychologists and philosophers have used for a long time, the hedonic treadmill. The idea is simple. Humans adapt to good things incredibly fast. Whatever you have, you adjust to, and then you need more to feel the same way. Get a nicer apartment within a few weeks. It's just your apartment. Buy the new phone. Within a month, it's just your phone. Get the promotion before long. That's just your salary. The treadmill keeps moving. The comfort keeps expanding. The satisfaction keeps slipping just out of reach. But I want to go deeper than the hedonic treadmill today because that idea explains why we adapt to good things. What I want to explore is something more specific. Why removing difficulty, removing the struggle itself, can actually hollow out the experience of being alive. Here's something worth thinking about. Your brain, the one you're using right now to watch this video, is essentially the same brain that your ancestors were using 50,000 years ago. The prefrontal cortex, the limbic system, the dopamine reward pathways, the stress response system, these were all built and refined over hundreds of thousands of years of evolution, and during most of that time, life was genuinely hard. Finding food required real effort. Staying warm required sustained work. Building shelter, maintaining relationships, navigating dangers, all of it demanded actual struggle, actual presence, actual investment. Your brain evolved to be activated by challenge. It was designed to release dopamine, that chemical we associate with pleasure and reward, not when you're comfortable, but when you've worked for something and achieved it. There's actually a fascinating distinction in how dopamine works that researchers have studied closely. There are two phases of the dopamine response. The first is anticipatory, the burst you get when you're working towards something, when you're in the hunt, when you're close but not there yet. The second is the reward response, the signal that says you did it. Here's the thing. Studies suggest that the anticipatory dopamine, the one connected to effort and pursuit, is actually stronger and more enduring than the reward dopamine. In other words, the journey genuinely does activate your brain more than the destination. Now ask yourself, how often does modern life give you the journey? When something is available instantly, there is no anticipatory arc. You want it, you have it done, no build-up, no investment, no effort, no genuine satisfaction at the end, because there was no real beginning. This is what I mean when I say we're living in a dopamine debt. Not because we're not getting enough stimulation, we're getting more than ever, but because the stimulation is hollow, it hits the reward pathway without activating the effort pathway, and over time, that imbalance starts to feel like something is missing, like life has this strange flatness to it, even when everything is technically fine. Neuroscientist Anna Lemke, in her work on dopamine and addiction, describes this as the pain-pleasure balance. She argues that our brains are constantly trying to stay level, like a scale trying to find equilibrium. Every pleasurable stimulus tips the scale toward pleasure, and the brain compensates by tipping it back toward discomfort. The more we seek easy stimulation, the more uncomfortable neutral feels. Put simply, the more you do nothing hard, the harder doing nothing becomes. Let me tell you about two different Friday evenings. In the first one, you come home tired from a long week. You open the fridge, figure out what you've got, decide to make something. You chop vegetables, you mess up the timing a little. You overcook something, you adjust. An hour later, you sit down with something you actually made. It's not perfect, but it's yours. In the second evening, you come home the same kind of tired. You open an app, scroll for a minute, tap a few buttons, and 30 minutes later, someone hands you a bag of exactly what you wanted. Which version feels better? Most people, if they're honest, will say the first one, not because the food is better necessarily, but because there was something in the process, something in the effort and the problem solving and the small mistakes that made the outcome feel real. Psychologist Barry Schwartz coined the term the paradox of choice, the idea that having too many options actually makes us less happy, not more, because more options mean more second guessing, more comparison, more awareness of what we could have chosen instead. But there's a related paradox that doesn't get talked about as much, the paradox of ease. When things are too easy to get, we stop valuing them. Not consciously, we don't decide to stop caring. It happens automatically. In the background, in the way our brains assign meaning. Effort creates investment, and investment creates attachment, pride, and meaning. There's actually research on this called the IKEA effect, a study by Michael Norton, Daniel Motion, and Dan Ariely that found people place significantly higher value on things they've assembled or built themselves, even when the end result is objectively worse than a professionally made version. The labor changes our perception. We love what we've worked for, not because of the object itself, but because the effort is encoded into it. Think about the things in your life that you're most proud of, the things that actually gave you that deep, durable sense of satisfaction. Almost certainly none of them were easy. Not the exam you studied for weeks to pass, not the project you stayed up late to finish, not the trip you saved up for, not the skill you practiced until your hands stopped shaking. The effort wasn't a cost you paid to get the reward. The effort was part of the reward. And here's what I think is the most important insight in this entire video. Easy pleasure is temporary. Earned satisfaction is lasting. Easy pleasure tells your nervous system. Nice, earned satisfaction tells it you are capable, you matter, you can handle things. Those are completely different messages, and the second one does something the first one never can. It builds the foundation of a self that you actually respect. Let's talk about something a lot of people feel but struggle to name. That feeling where you have a whole free day ahead of you, no obligations, no plans, and somehow by the end of it you feel worse than you did when you started. You watch things, you scrolled, maybe you ate something good, you technically had a day off, and yet there's this low-grade sense of waste, of emptiness, of time that passed but didn't matter. Sound familiar? This is what I call the comfort flatline, and it's one of the least talked about consequences of a life with too much easy access. When everything is available and nothing requires real effort, motivation starts to atrophy. Not dramatically, not like a switch flipping off, more like a muscle you stop using. Slowly, quietly, until one day you realize you can't quite remember the last time you were genuinely excited to work towards something. Psychologists talk about a concept called self-determination theory, the idea that human beings have three core psychological needs: autonomy, competence, and connection, and the most relevant one here is competence, the need to feel like you're actually getting better at things, like you're growing, like the world is responding to your effort in meaningful ways. Modern convenience culture is quietly destroying that feedback loop. When you can outsource, automate, or shortcut almost everything, you rarely get to experience mastery. And mastery, that feeling of genuinely getting better at something hard, is one of the most powerful sources of lasting motivation that exists. There's a concept in psychology called flow, developed by researcher Mihaly Csikszentmihalyi. You've probably experienced it even if you didn't know the name. It's that state where you're so absorbed in what you're doing that time disappears. You're not thinking about your phone. You're not wondering what else you could be doing. You're just in it. Here's the key. Flow only happens at a very specific intersection. When the challenge is just slightly above your current skill level, not too easy, that leads to boredom. Not too hard, that leads to anxiety. Just right. The comfort trap eliminates that sweet spot. It replaces challenge with ease, and in doing so, it eliminates the conditions for flow, for absorption, for the experience of time well spent. And without that, without the experience of genuine challenge and genuine effort, motivation doesn't just plateau, it starts to erode, because motivation isn't something you have. It's something you build through evidence that your effort matters, through experience of growth, through the friction that tells you you're alive and engaging with something real. Here's something I want you to sit with for a moment. Your character, the kind of person you actually are, is not something you're born with and just carry around. It's something that's built through your responses to difficulty, who you are under pressure, what you do when something is hard, whether you stay when it would be easier to quit, whether you try again when you failed, whether you do the thing even when you don't feel like it. These moments don't just reveal character, They create it. Think about two different versions of you. In one version, every time something is uncomfortable, you find a way to avoid it. Every time a task feels hard, you defer it. Every time an urge appears for food, for distraction, for entertainment, you follow it immediately. In the other version, you don't avoid discomfort entirely. You let it sit for a moment. You do the hard thing before the easy thing sometimes. You follow through, even when the motivation has faded. After a year of these two versions, who do you think has a stronger sense of identity? Who trusts themselves more? Who feels more capable, more grounded, more real? The first version has had an easier year. The second version has had a more meaningful one. There's a phrase from Jocko Willink, a former Navy SEAL turned author, that stuck with me: discipline is freedom. On the surface it sounds paradoxical, but what he means is that the ability to do hard things, to override the pull of comfort and immediate pleasure, is what gives you actual freedom over your life. Because here's the truth: if you can't say no to the comfortable thing, you're not actually free, you're just following the path of least resistance, which is a kind of slavery dressed up as relaxation. This isn't about self-punishment, it's not about suffering for suffering's sake, it's about building a relationship with yourself where you're the one calling the shots, not your cravings, not your discomfort, not the endless offers of easy entertainment. And that relationship, that sense of agency and self-respect, is ultimately what gives a life its texture, its depth, its meaning. So what do we actually do about this? I want to be careful here because I think a lot of content about this topic oversells the solution. It makes it sound like you just need to wake up at 4 a.m. and do cold plunges, and suddenly everything falls into place. That's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is simpler and harder at the same time. You start choosing difficulty on purpose in small ways, deliberately, not because pain is good, but because challenge is necessary for your sense of purpose, for your motivation, for your self-respect, and for the basic experience of feeling like your life is real. Here's a useful framework. Think of your daily choices as falling into two categories. The first category is what we might call earned pleasure, pleasure that comes after effort, cooking a meal, finishing a project, going for a run, and then sitting with the satisfaction afterward. Reading something difficult, learning a skill. The second category is consumed pleasure, pleasure that arrives without effort. Streaming something, scrolling, snacking without thinking about it. Killing time. Both of these things exist. Both of them are part of a human life. I'm not saying you should eliminate the second category. I'm saying if most of your waking hours are in the second category, you're going to feel it. You're going to feel that flatness, that drift, that low-grade sense that your days are happening to you rather than being shaped by you. The shift I'm suggesting is a ratio shift, not a total revolution, just more earned, less consumed. And here's what I've noticed, both in research and in watching this play out in real life, is that the first few weeks of this feel terrible. When you start doing harder things, your brain fights back. It's been calibrated to the easy path. Now suddenly you're asking it to wait, to work, to sit with discomfort without immediately soothing it. You'll feel restless, maybe bored, maybe a little irritable. You'll feel the pull of the phone, the app, the easy option more intensely than before. That resistance, that's the recalibration, that's the process working. Because on the other side of that resistance, sometimes days later, sometimes weeks, something shifts. The earned pleasures start to feel richer. The ordinary moments feel more present. The baseline mood lifts in a way that's quiet but real. Not because your circumstances changed, because your relationship to effort changed. Let me leave you with a few specific anchors, ways to actually use this idea in your life. The first one is what I call the delay habit. Before you satisfy an urge immediately, whether it's for food, entertainment, a scroll, or a distraction, wait 10 minutes, not forever. Just 10 minutes, see what happens in that space. You'll often find the urge fades or transforms into something else. The second anchor is choosing the hard version once a day. Not everything has to be hard, but every day find one thing where you have the option of an easy path and a harder path, and take the harder path. Cook instead of order, walk instead of drive, read instead of stream. The specific thing matters less than the habit of choosing difficulty. The third anchor is tracking completion, not just effort. It's easy to start things. What builds real self-trust is finishing things, especially when you don't feel like it. Keep a simple log of things you followed through on. Watch it grow. That record becomes evidence that you're the kind of person who does what they say they'll do. And the fourth anchor, probably the most important one, is protecting your mornings before the world starts offering you easy stimulation. Spend at least the first 30 minutes of your day in a state of effort or reflection. No phone, no news, no recommendations from an algorithm, just you and something that requires your attention and your presence. These aren't miracle habits, they're small recalibrations, but over months and years they compound into something real. We started this video with a simple question: when was the last time you felt genuinely deeply satisfied? I hope by now you have a different way of thinking about what creates that feeling. It's not comfort, it's not ease, it's not having more options or fewer problems or a perfectly optimized routine. It's the experience of being genuinely in contact with your own life, showing up for the hard parts, choosing the difficult thing because you respect yourself enough to do it, letting the struggle mean something instead of running from it the moment it appears. The comfort trap isn't a conspiracy, it's not some evil designed by corporations, though certainly some of them benefit from it. It's just what happens when the world gets very good at offering easy things, and we forget that we were built for something harder. You were built to hunt, to create, to endure, to grow, to struggle and make meaning from the struggle. That's not poetic. That's neuroscience. That's what your brain is literally wired to do. And every time you choose difficulty over ease, even in small ways, even in ways no one else sees, you're giving your brain what it actually needs. You're feeding the part of yourself that knows how to thrive. So, the comfort is still there. The apps are still there. The easy path is always going to be there. The only question is what you choose to do with it. Thanks for watching.